Hello, thank you for joining us today. I'm Crystal Wittevrongle, collaborating with Common Sense Calgary, here with Jeff Davison, who is running for mayor in Calgary's 2025 election. Jeff, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hey, thanks very much for having me.
All right, let's get right to it. Tell me a bit about yourself, your experience. What brings you to this role? What foundation leads City Hall through you?
Well, I'm a former city councilor, and looking at where the direction of this city council has gone, I think we need to get the city back on track. For me, I have spent 25 years in energy technology. I'm a movie maker. I have been in the healthcare industry now for 4 years. All of that experience tells me everything that's going on downtown right now is just wrong. And so we need to get the city back on track. And so ultimately, how do we create that safe, affordable place of opportunity for everyone is really what I'm running on.
Awesome. And so, what are you hearing from folks at the door or in the community that are some of the biggest concerns or priorities for Calgarians?
We hear a lot around things like the blanket rezoning. Number one, I have said from day one, we're going to repeal the blanket rezoning. That's important. Number two is all around public safety. People just don't feel safe in our city anymore. Seniors tell me they don't want to walk around downtown. Young people are telling me the trains are a problem. When our own bus drivers are being assaulted on the job, we have a problem with public safety. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest issue in this election that we hear from people is just simply a lack of trust with City Hall. It seems like we have a very top down leadership style going on there. It's very much a we know best attitude. And quite frankly, citizens are tired of it.
Yes, yeah, I hear that a lot as well. And so, one of the things with discussing the challenges is also discussing who's best positioned to meet those challenges or work towards alleviating them. And some of the issues I've heard have related to the provincial level and how the city chooses to work with the provincial level or doesn't work with the provincial level. What are your thoughts on the relationship between the city and the province as of the last few years?
At the end of the day, I think we've seen the province really putting their thumb down on city council because city council has failed to act like a good partner. And so when we're talking about interchanges, when we're talking about large infrastructure projects like Green Line, city council has really led with ideology, and that really conflicts with what the end goal is. And that's just to make life better for Calgarians. And so I think you've seen a provincial government stand in when things have fallen apart to take control of projects, right or wrong. I hope that given my experience and leadership style around bringing people together and finding the common ground, will show the province that we are capable of once again being a trusted partner and that we're capable of leading things for Calgarians.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess when it comes to City Hall, what are some of the core functions of City Hall that you will be working towards redirecting the city perhaps towards?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, right? I think, for a long time, as Calgarians, we've said we can't be everything to everyone, right? And we really need to think about how we stay in our own lane. And that's really what the campaign is getting back to core basics, right? Getting back to what we need to be doing as a city. And frankly, my job is to pay the police department and pick up the garbage and pave the roads and things like that. My job is to not weigh in on healthcare. I work in the healthcare industry right now, and I can tell you that primarily, this is a function of the provincial government. And so that's where we need to start working more collaboratively, staying in our own lanes, and really respecting what each other's role in government is.
So, of course, any conversation about city policy also begs the question of who is going to pay for it. And that takes us to property taxes.
Mhm.
Huge issue for a lot of Calgarians are the increases that we're seeing consistently year after year. What are your thoughts on that as a potential mayor?
I think it's really funny that city council has told us that we are in a affordability crisis. We always seem to be in perma crisis with these people, but we're in an affordability crisis, and their only solution to that is to increase property taxes yet again, right? So, I mean, they've got to start putting their mouth where their money is, quite frankly. For us, I plan on freezing property taxes, and this is not discernible from magic. This is very easy for us to do. Like most households, it's time to get our budget in order and focus on the basics and building from the basics. We can't be everything to everyone going forward. And I think overwhelmingly, when we go across this city, people in every community are telling me life is just generally getting to the point of unaffordable. And so the things we can do as a city are get back to focusing on how we deliver core infrastructure, core basic services, do a great job of that, right? I firmly believe we can do a great job with that. But we've got to stop overtaxing people for pet projects and other things that just don't make sense right now.
And so every year, I always like to talk about snow removal because it's something we can all very visibly and tangibly see. Um,
Mhm.
if we're going to be capping property taxes and people aren't seeing quality services, wouldn't that mean we would see service quality decline?
Well, I think we've seen services go down even though we've been paying a lot more. Most citizens can't tell me what the value is they're getting for tax dollars anymore. I can tell you as a former city councilor, I put forward a program and we successfully ran it in a pilot for 2 years on shoveling the 1,100 kilometers of pathways we have in our city, right? We don't need to be building more bike lanes. We need to take care of the infrastructure we have. And that means acknowledging that we're a winter city and ensuring that we have a program in place to manage those infrastructure assets over every season. To me, it's just getting back in line with what citizens are asking us to do.
And when you talk about infrastructure, that leads me to thinking about the horrific scenario we were all in last year when the water main break occurred, and lots of people had really big problems with the way that the city handled communications surrounding that, as well as mitigation. And there was a lot of things that could have potentially been done better. What do you think about that whole thing and how that unrolled for the city of Calgary?
I think there's a couple things here. Number one, it tells us that we're not managing basic infrastructure to meet the need of a growing city. So when 70,000 people are moving to Calgary every single year, running water is quite important. But remember that also 40% of our roads have now fallen into disrepair, right? The city has failed to manage our core infrastructure. And part of being a city that wants to
Mhm.
attract opportunity and attract businesses to our city and frankly retain them here is managing the basics properly. And I think we all go back to not being able to shower for weeks on ends or whatever we were told to do, followed by communication that says, well, don't drink the water, drink the beer. Well, all due respect, we're not looking for comedy at this time. We're looking for leadership. And that's really where I think the city failed.
And so, what would you have done differently as mayor during that crisis?
I think honestly, look, I can't blame city council for infrastructure falling apart. I can blame them for the lack of budget they put forward on how to investigate infrastructure. I mean, I think our pipe maintenance budget went from 10 to $2 million because they were too busy putting money into other pet projects. I will fail them on that point. But there's three things that I've never heard any city councilor nor the mayor ask of administration. What's the permanent fix? When will it be done? And how much will it cost? Because we don't want to see citizens in this problem again. But not once have I heard the language around that happen. And so for me, I think day one, we're going to have to look at how we better evaluate our infrastructure as a growing city and where do we need to place dollars, even if it's in the non-sexy things like underground pipes. Where do we have to put dollars to ensure that citizens are met with those basic needs, such as running water?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And so some of those sexy projects, I guess, are some of the big projects that the city has committed to in
Mhm.
recent years, like the new arena, for example, or the Arts Commons. And with these big projects, the city's chief financial officer had said we really shouldn't take them all on without significant financial risk. Yet city council went forward with all four of them. And what do you think about that?
Well, and let's be clear, this city council fired the individual who was responsible for the dollars and tried to make them responsible. They put the run on the city CFO. And to me, that just is just all kinds of red flags when it comes to governance and oversight. The challenge, I think, is that, again, we're in a situation where I remember being a city councilor and advocating that there are things we can get done by making our money work for us. And that included an arena deal of which we got all of our money back in 7 years on. That allowed us to take a profit going forward and put it back into community revitalization on an ongoing basis. The challenge we have is that this city council has never heard of the word negotiation. They have no idea how to get deals done. And so we went from capping the city's investment in things like the arena at $287 million to now $1.2 billion of taxpayer funded work that's going to happen. Is it going to recover all of our money? According to one city councilor who may be running for mayor, she says we get our money back. But calculating tax base in a district that was going to build out anyways and claiming that as a win to get your money back is not how math works. The first of all, the arena deal is not within the community revitalization levy. So every dollar made in that arena doesn't contribute back into the local area. Number two, it has put the compromise on other projects going forward that we critically need. And so, right now, if we're a city that looks at about $15 billion worth of infrastructure projects going on, I would say over half of them are related to public sector work. I don't have confidence that we can do these things on time or on budget. And those are two words that this city council needs to learn. And it's certainly two words that we are going to lead by example on.
So time and budget are two things that make me think of the Green Line LRT, as we
Mm-hmm.
see that has been a project that has gone over budget. It is now serving far fewer Calgarians than originally proposed, and the actual track length is not anywhere near what was originally proposed. What do you think about that and how that has unfolded? It's a scenario that leaves many people, quite baffled.
Yeah, it's baffling at best, and I am often in the position where I'm not on city council anymore, and I don't really have a lot of the answers. I feel like the transparency on this project is gone. I feel like the vision has been lost, and I feel like delay after delay after delay has done nothing but cost us time and opportunity. And so, where we were once able to look at delivering a project from north all the way south of Calgary for $4.65 billion, all of that came off the table. I mean, we negotiated 17 recommendations that this city council seemed to ignore. We looked at how we could up the funding and recognized that inflationary costs alone were going to mean that this thing wasn't going to be done for the 465. Uh, Again, I think, all due respect to council, you failed on this project and you failed to deliver one section of track. We've been talking about this train line for the better part of, I mean, nearly 20 years. And to see maybe 20% of the project, 30, 40% of the project for triple the budget, it's not acceptable. And so we actually need to if we're going to be saddled with delivering this project, we need to put some rigor behind it as the next city council and put some cost controls around the parameters, take back control of how we're going to do this on time and on budget. Because at the end of the day, this is about moving Calgarians around, and Calgarians are the ones that have been footing the bill for it and have nothing in return.
And if, as mayor, another round of cost overruns were to occur with this project, what would you do? How would you approach that?
I think the challenge is once we get in there, that's going to be the biggest thing we're going to have to look at in terms of the numbers. I wish I could fully give you a story right now that I comprehend everything going on, but the city hasn't been all that much more transparent with you than they have me in terms of where this project is sitting at. And so I think getting control of the project and understanding that we have to move forward with capping where the costs are currently, and then we're going to have to look at options around that. I firmly
Mhm.
believe for the dollars we're talking now, we're probably stuck with, the event center south. I think the challenge is going to be if we are going to build this, we also need to be thinking about the operational costs of Green Line once that starts. Day one, that's predicted to be about $48 million a year. And so start to think about that in terms of taxes. That's about a 5% property tax increase. And so you need to start thinking through the program and understanding what the total cost to citizens is going to be down the road, not just looking at how we deliver point A to point B. One of the things we're talking about with Green Line is why have we not advanced transit oriented development along that line? We should be building tax base, we should be building ridership, and we should be providing some sort of time incentive to developers in order to build high density along that line so that we offset some of the costs that we're currently seeing go overhead.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so, what are some learnings, I guess, from where we sit now on the Green Line LRT? Is it that we should be, developing more along that route to offset the cost, as you just said, or are there other things that we could kind of take away from this moving forward?
For me, I think Green Line is about, again, moving people from point A to point B. This is not about beautification of city building. This is about, basic transportation that Calgarians have asked us for. Number one, I think the vision has got to get back on the table that we are a transit project first and foremost. But then it's going to be where do we go with it? Because I think, building a line to nowhere isn't exactly the option either. And so we need to be pretty thoughtful about how we're going to work with the other orders of government to either land this thing into downtown and potentially get south to Seton Hospital, And then we're going to have to look at, if we are going long term with a rail agenda, how do we get into north central Calgary with a line that has been plagued for over 20 years?
And with mega projects like this, how should the risks and costs, frankly, be shared between the city and the province? Because there's been some issue there as well.
Well, and again, I think this is a failure for city council to build a project or a partnership with the other orders of government. And I think it's a failure of them to manage their own infrastructure and costs. I mean, look, we're not the experts on building trains, and city council has to stop acting like the experts. We need to bring those experts to the table to figure out how we now fix a major problem. And it's a major problem with cost on how to deliver this line. I think again we'd done that work back from 2017 to 2021. Where that work has now gone off the rail, I couldn't tell you, but we need to put experts back in charge of this project.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. And getting Calgarians from A to B safely leads me to the next topic is transit safety overall. This
Mm.
has been a huge concern for many Calgarians with rising incidents of crime or violent crime in many of the LRT stations and transit more specifically. And so, as mayor, what do you think about the current transit safety strategy and what would you change about it, if anything?
Well, number one, I think it's deplorable. People are turning away from transit as an option because they simply don't feel safe. Again, seniors don't feel safe on there. My teenage daughter doesn't feel safe on there. I don't frankly feel safe on there. When we have people, using drugs openly on our trains, when they are defecating on our trains, when, drug addicts are roaming City Hall Station, for instance, this is a major problem. And, I understand that turnstiles are going to be a huge cost going forward, but we have to put a mitigation strategy in place now, right? We have to get our rider numbers up. We have to be able to show people that we can make transit safe again. Like I said earlier, at a point where our own operators are being attacked on the job, we have failed to protect both citizens and our staff. And that's a major red flag to me. So putting public safety back into a position of priority is absolutely paramount for us. And if that comes from having to look at partnering with the province on the sheriff's program or looking at how we add peace officers to trains, all of these things need to be looked at very quickly in order to provide some confidence back to Calgarians that we can create a safer city. I do find it interesting that City Council has recently come out and said that our city's safer. Pat on the back for us, we made it safer. But I don't believe that at all. I think, what we're seeing is a lack of crime being reported because people are tired of nothing happening about it. And so there's apathy to report crime now, and that's absolutely a situation we have to get out of. We should be getting tough on crime. We should be partnering with our provincial government on dealing with mental health and addiction. And we need to come up with a long-term strategy that keeps Calgarians safe, period, full stop.
Yes, absolutely. And dealing with the province is something we've seen a lot of when it comes to the supervised consumption site in downtown Calgary.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on where that project, by project, I mean in the sense of, some say we should close it, some say relocate it, some say, it should be left as is. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts on that site in and of itself?
I think the safe consumption sites are a prime example of what we're doing simply is not working. And so we need to pivot from that, right? We're not seeing any added benefit, in particular to the communities that have safe injection sites in them, number one. But number two, yes, I would close it, but we have to figure out where we put those people first, right? We simply can't dump more social disorder back onto these communities that are already overrun with drug addicts and crime happening. So I would propose actually working with the province and talking about how we take safe consumption sites and move them away from, frankly, pushing drug use to a more medically driven system. So whether we're looking at methadone clinics, whether we're looking at other options, providing medical assistance rather than support and enabling, I think is really the direction we need to be going. And that is the direction that I believe our provincial government is going. And as a city, again, healthcare is their job. We're here to simply enable how we help clean up the situation for everyone.
Hmm. Yes, and so I like the way that you approached your answer to that, and again, it comes down to if the province is going to continue to take the lead, the city does need to be positioned to be able to support that. And so it sounds like you're very much in favor of that. And so what role do you see the city playing if the province is taking the lead?
Well, I'll give you a prime example. I mean, I think it's keeping the community safe. And so, where and when we have healthcare assets in the community led by the provincial government, we have to support the wraparound care of that community. And so, a prime example, again, where I think this has all failed is a couple of years ago, the province stood up and said, we recognize that social disorder is getting out of control. We'll help support with the sheriff's program in our cities. Calgary was the only municipality in Alberta that turned down the program. In fact, they didn't just turn down the program, nobody called the minister back to take them up on the program. And so this is just a failure again as to where I think where and when we need to be working hand in hand is on things like public safety and how that relates to mental health and addiction. We can't continue to operate in silos with this because I simply say to Calgarians, do you feel safer today over 4 years ago? And overwhelmingly, the answer is no. So again, what we're doing isn't working. What we need to be doing is working together, dropping the silos, and striving for a better outcome for everybody.
And so, you kind of touched on it before when you said people just aren't reporting some of the crime. So the statistics can be misleading in that sense. And what do you think needs to change in order for people to feel confident in reporting that crime? We at least have a better read on what's actually happening in our communities.
I mean, I think it's a number of things. And I think it's also important to remember that this is a very complex problem and we don't have a lot of simple solutions for it. I think what we have to look at is number one, more police officers are needed. No, I won't say that 500 are needed. I think certain city councilors who are running around saying 500 new cops is what we need. Well, that's preposterous. That has got to be about an 8% property tax increase. So do we need more officers? Yes. 500? No, that's absolutely not a solution. That's just pandering for an election. At the end of the day, we also need to recognize that, look, most businesses downtown are not reporting crimes and they're not shuffling people along because they're showing up at their businesses the next morning and windows are being smashed out. You know, petty crimes are happening locally and, just explicit drug use is everywhere. And they're afraid to report those crimes because there's a backlash on their own business when and where they do try to take things into their own hands or report these crimes. We need to obviously work with the federal government on bail reform. We need to be working with the province on things like more officers. We need to also be working with the province on things like how do we enhance and do more with community courts so that when and where we're arresting some of these bad guys, we're keeping them off the street, not having them return the next night to continue to prey on addicts. But then we also need to look at how do we work with all of the wraparound care and community supporting agencies that are doing work on our streets. We all need to come to the table together, and that's why I proposed a task force on doing this and figure out A, do we have a common problem? Do we all agree to the same problem? And then B, what is our role individually in solving that problem? And we're going to have to work on co-funding arrangements. We're going to have to work on staying in our own lane. But like I say, what we're doing isn't working. So we've got to start trying something new. Where I'm encouraged we can make a difference on this is that I fully believe Calgary is the entrepreneurial hub of the world. I think we've got brilliant minds here that are capable of solving very complex problems. And if we bring the right people to the table and we put the right resources to the task, I know Calgary can help lead North America out of this social disorder disaster.
So I'll jump right to one of the topics that you mentioned right at the beginning is one of the heated ones, one of the ones you hear most about, which is the blanket rezoning.
Sure.
That has been something that has shaken the city. Calgarians don't feel heard. And we're seeing just a disconnection, I guess, with City Hall and the residents in the cities as to what has gone on with this policy and what continues to go on in communities. You've said you would repeal it. Can you walk me through your thoughts on that policy as it stands?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's be very clear. I think one of the greatest things about Calgary is the differences of all of our communities, and we don't want every community to look the same. And just to set the table on the conversation, I think we were led to believe this was about affordability. Well, the average row house starting at $700,000 plus isn't affordable. And for everybody who says, well, they have basement suites and that'll help, every single place in Calgary could have a basement suite today if they wanted. That's not reality, that this is about affordability. We were also led to believe that this is about densifying our city to keep up with demand. And that's not true either. You simply don't build 4 units at a time and keep up with 70,000 people a year moving to Calgary. So primarily for me, the function is this: we've got to develop very differently, and I'm the prime example of having built 3 new communities within existing communities by partnering with community on how we do it. And we're adding between 3 projects in Springbank Hill, West District, and Winsport. We're going to add 55,000 residents to the west side. All of it with very little opposition because we actually worked and put the community first in how we do it. And so there's benefits created. We create amenities, we create affordability, we create diversity of product types so people can buy houses all the way to apartments. We also have affordability measures built in with 15% off market housing to support those who need a little bit of help on their housing. At the end of the day, here's what this is about. This is about a city council that pretends they know best. And rather than listening to the 90% of Calgarians that said, please don't do this, they moved forward with it anyway. Our job is to work with community and for community. And remember that we work for Calgarians. It's not to work against people on putting housing initiatives in place that nobody campaigned on to begin with.
And so the city is saying that there's been about 1,500 new units in the year since the policy was passed, and they're viewing that as a success, at least partially in terms of numbers. Do you think that that's a good metric to measure success of a policy like this?
I think the only metric city council should be measuring themselves on is that they've successfully ruined Calgary communities. I think that's the challenge. We need to listen to Calgarians and put Calgarians back in the driver's seat. And this is something Calgarians just did not ask us for. And so, this idea that we've created 1,500 new homes, I mean, again, 55,000 residents will move to the west side in a high density project that I've created and was supported by community. That's how you work with community to build density. I don't at all believe that city council should be patting themselves on the back for a job well done when it comes to the blanket rezoning.
And so if it was positioned as affordability, which it was, but it isn't helping with, what role do you see the city playing when it comes to affordable housing for people? I assume you agree with affordable housing. Everything you've said has aligned with that. But in terms of what role the city should play necessarily?
I don't think the city should play a role at all. I think the city should be working with the development community to ensure they're building 15% off market housing and supporting an industry. Because let's face it, the development community can build it a lot faster than City Hall can do anything. The challenge I have with the affordability measures that council's going through is that when it takes 8 years to get a building out of the ground, but they're telling us there's a crisis, again, they've failed, right? The development community can work on time, right? And where and when they've got time as an advantage, we can create affordability. And so if you think about even in this RCG, blanket rezoning nonsense that they've got, the average unit that we heard from the Inner City Building Association has gone up by about $120,000, which is all just related to time of carrying cost, time that has taken inflation, time where materials now cost more. And so council needs to start moving at the speed of business, not at the speed of City Hall.
Yes, yes. And so, getting out of the way and helping to help development rather than be the ones to necessarily do development is something I've heard from Calgarians as well in what they're looking for in the future. And so we've talked about transit safety and supervised consumption sites, the big projects. Is there anything else on your mind as it relates to your race for mayor that people really need to be talking more about or understanding differently or better?
I think that this election comes down to one bigger thing, and that's who do we trust, right? Do we trust a guy who has gone out, climbed a mountain, and is now totally flip-flopped on policies? Do we trust city council, both the mayor and councilors running for mayor, that they've done a good job? No. I don't think any of this stuff is about anything more than leadership, experience, and vision. For me, I think about my 25-year career in energy, technology, having produced film, now in the healthcare space, and having sat on city council. That's really the type of experience we need. I am a leader who brings people together and finds the common ground, and I don't need a bunch of yes people sitting at the table with me to get that done. I want people to help me solve big problems. And by doing that, we're going to need to have some pretty tough conversations about where our city's at. And then it comes down to vision. And I think our vision is very simple, but very effective. It's create a safe, affordable place of opportunity for everyone. I think that is Calgary in a nutshell, and it's the Calgary we want to get back to being.
Absolutely. And in this election is a bit unique because we're seeing the emergence of political parties at the municipal level for the first time. Some folks are affiliated, others are not. Are you yourself affiliated with any parties at the municipal level?
No, I'm running as an independent. Like I say, I can tell you, I've learned in the healthcare world and running a provincial wide charity, if I had a bunch of people just nodding their heads saying yes, I would fire every one of them. Because I actually believe that we need some diversity of thought. I believe that conversations can solve big problems. And I believe the only way to innovate is bringing different perspectives to the table. And so I've chose to run as an independent. I fully respect the people that have gone otherwise. But I will say this, the majority of Calgarians were out against blanket rezoning. They were also against the party system at the local level. And so I think people are going to be pretty thoughtful about how they cast their ballot on October 20th accordingly.
And what about at the provincial or federal level? Do you have any affiliations with any parties at those levels of government, just to give people, an understanding of your values?
I mean, I'm a conservative, always have been, always will vote that way. And so I think that's the only thing that people need to understand about me. In politics, people will want to make up words about you and call you everything, but I know who I am. I'm Jeff, I'm a conservative, and I'm a Calgarian.
Wonderful. That's a really good way of leading to closing thoughts, Jeff. If there's one thing you want to leave with our viewers today, both of Common Sense Calgary, as well as potential voters or just Calgarians who may not vote for you, what would you want to leave with folks today?
I think this is the most important election Calgary has seen probably in decades, if not ever. I think we are going to have a massive turnover on city council. And what we need is somebody responsible and reasonable at the helm. And that's why I'm asking you for your support to be mayor. Uh, I think Calgary is one of the greatest cities on earth. And I think we've got a lot of problems, but I believe with the right people at the table, we can solve those problems. And that's my job as mayor, to bring those people together, find the common ground, and help solution some of these problems in our city. Because at the end of the day, we want Calgarians to be successful. And so let's get government out of the way. Let's get you moving forward, and let's elect people that have an agenda on your success, not their own.
I love the thought of bringing solutions to the table instead of just bringing problems to the table. We know what some of the problems are. So I love the solution focused mindset going to this. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for your time today. This has been lovely. I've really enjoyed getting to understand some of your perspectives and platform. And to our viewers, thank you very much for being with us today as well. And take this moment to really reflect, move forward, be engaged, be informed, and get out and vote. We definitely need to see a higher turnout this time than we did in 2021. And we really need to see Calgarians' voices being heard. So thank you again, Jeff. It's been lovely to chat with you today.
Thank you for having me.